Are you fed up with seeing these all over the floor in your base? A big horrible brown loot bag with stuff in it that you've dropped that you think you don't need? That actually, believe it or not, could have more use for you than what you actually think. And if you want to know why, come with me and I'll show you. So we've been out and about, farming our resources, picking everything up of what we think we'll need. We've put all our good stuff away. As we say, we've dumped that bag on the floor because we think we don't need any of that. Don't need that meat, don't need that flesh. Putrid meat, ugh, don't need that. Bones, no. Stone, you get loads of that, don't need it. Pick some up while getting my iron. I went out for iron, not stone. Well, even if it's only an odd little bit, surprisingly, it is actually more useful to you than what you may think. Because there are uses for pretty much every item in the game, believe it or not. And if we take a look in this box here, these are a few different items that I've just collected up to kind of give you some examples of different things that a lot of the time people may think are no use, other than like gold and silver for spending at the vendors. Stone, as we know, is used for building. Bones can be used for some weapon pieces like shields, but not a lot of other things. Weapons naturally can be used or dismantled, which I'll show you in a second. And then things like plant fibre, do we need any of that? And then of course you've got all your other expendable stuff again, putrid meat. You've got a couple of gazelle carcasses there and fish that you just think, I don't need any of these, I'm just going to keep throwing them out. Surprisingly, there is actually use for them. So if we start back at the very beginning and we take some stone, for example, as we know, this can be used for building and it's used for the tier 1 building pieces, so sandstone. Yeah, alright, that's one thing. You think you've got a bit extra left over, you don't need it. Or you've put it in your furnace and you've turned it into bricks, but you've still got a bit left that you don't need. What else can you do with it? Well, actually, if you take your stone to your grinder and you apply it to a grinder, as you can see down the bottom right there, that will produce salt for you. Even though you can pick salt up in a few places around the game in little bits and bats of it, it's actually got a lot more use and it's a lot easier to get. If you actually grind up normal stone in a grinder, you can get a ton of this. And salt is used for cooking on your stove, so whether you have the regular stove or the improved stove, it doesn't matter which one. But you will notice that some of the recipes as you go along actually require salt for cooking, and that is a quick, simple, easy way, rather than going out farming it. If you've got a load of stone, chuck it in your grinder and that will produce you salt. Okay, yes, I mean, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, that's nice and easy, that's simple, so what, that's a bit of stone. I don't want to grind up thousands and thousands of stone that I've got. Yeah, by all means, if you've too much, drop it if you don't need it, but that's just another little use for you. Another item that people can end up finding doesn't have a lot of use for, other than turning into twine or for feeding animals in the stable to tame them up from babies into grown animals, is the plant fibre. And yes, it is used for that, but there's also another use, well, two uses even, that you can use plant fibre for. You can either add it to your compost bin here, or your compost heap. So if I just split this stack a moment and we pop some in there, as we can see, it doesn't do anything yet, but we'll come back to that in just a second. But again, we can also add the remainder of our plant fibre to the grinder once again, and this will produce spice for us. So again, if you want a nice, quick and easy way of getting a lot of spice, which again, spice is used in cooking on your stove, for example, the spiced haunch or the spiced steak, which you'll need for when you go up into the cold areas on the map, and also there are some other recipes that may require it, but there are two of the commodities that you'll need for cooking that you can get really easy from the grinder. So that's salt from stone and spice from fibre. Now this next one again kind of brings us back to a couple of areas once again. It brings us back to the compost heap, but it also still involves the grinder again, because if you're not making bone shields anymore or using them for any of the other low level armors that sometimes require it, so you're just dropping all that bone that you find once again. It's no good if you just place it in the compost heap as it is, but if you take that bone and you pop it once again into your grinder, as you can see we get another useful item that comes out of the grinder, but this time from the bones we get bone meal. And bone meal, as a lot of people will know if you grow your own flowers and plants etc in Conan Exiles, will know that if you take bone meal and you add it into your compost heap with your plant fibre, still does nothing, but there's one final ingredient that we can add to that that will actually help us produce compost, which is an item that we need to be able to put in our planters to grow our own lotus or aloe. And for this we need to go back to our fridge, then all that putrid meat that you kept because you decided not to throw it away anymore because it does actually have a use. If we add this to our compost heap, as you will now see at the bottom right there, we have a crafting menu now appeared and we are now producing compost. But it doesn't stop there, you can even take that one step further, and as you can see there in the box we've got a nice little batch of compost that's now produced, so that fills up our box and makes it look full. However, if you're growing your plants, those of you that do will know that in order to grow things like lotus blossoms, and there are some other plants as well that you will need this for, you can't use regular compost. Regular compost will only produce things like the aloe leaves, for example. So if you want to grow black lotus, purple lotus, yellow lotus or any of those, what you need to do is, again with your plant fibre, putrid meat and bone meal, is add some blood to it for one item. There's also another item that we need, but we'll leave some blood in there for a moment. That won't change anything of what's happening there. That'll continue to produce our regular compost for us. But as you can see, we also get some fat grubs, which are again also useful for putting in your fish traps. And in order to get blood, what you will need to do, I'll leave that in there for a moment just so that you can see it in there, is again go back to your fridge, and all that human meat you've collected if you've been doing your sacrificial stuff for your leveling up your different altars. So if you've been using your knife from Mitra or from Deketo or Set or any of those, and you've kept the human flesh, if you bring that to your fluid press, which is another useful station to have, if you pop the human meat into the press, again as you can see on the bottom right there, we're now producing blood, so that will top up the little bit of blood that we have there, and this will apply to any of the meats if you pop them in, and it will turn it to blood, so normal blood, regular blood. And if we want to keep anything like feral flesh or anything that we've farmed while we've been out and about and we found we've got too much of it, then once again you can keep it in your fridge, and then if you pull it out of your fridge when you're ready to use it, if you want to turn it into putrid meat to help you produce more compost, what you need to first do is place that meat in your compost bin. Now it won't speed up the process of producing your compost, but what that will do is that will turn from the raw flesh into putrid meat over time, so it will decay into putrid meat, which will then help the bone meal and plant fibre keep producing your compost. Now I know there'll be those of you out there that have said, okay, well that's fair enough, that's all fine, I've got enough compost growing to start my own garden centre, fair enough, what do I do with the rest of the putrid meat I don't want? I don't want to just have tons of fridges full of the stuff, but I need to go out and farm some ichor, and that means killing a load of spiders and hopefully bit by bit building up some ichor. Yes, this is probably the best, most efficient way to gain ichor from farming spiders, but just as an offset sort of way of doing it, if you will, while you're kind of around your base and again using up those odd bits of resource that you don't need, once again we're back at the fluid press, and if you take the putrid meat and you pop that into your fluid press, that will eventually produce, after a certain amount, it'll take so many pieces at a time, but if you add this in, this will eventually produce you ichor. Right, so as you can see there, just off camera, just been out and farmed up a bit more putrid meat, and as you can see there, that has produced a teeny little bit of ichor. It's not a lot, but as I say, while you're clearing out your base and trying to keep things clean and tidy, pop that odd little bit into your fluid press that you don't need, and it will turn it from putrid meat into ichor, which, if you do a lot of alchemy stuff, one of the uses for ichor is by combining it with bark on an alchemy bench with at least a tier 3 or above alchemist, and you will be able to produce oil from ichor and bark. So this is just another little way of boosting up your ichor production, which again can also be used in lots of different ways, because if you come to this little spot, for example, where we are here, you've got a little camp behind us full of skeletons, which if you chop those guys up once you kill them, they will give you a ton of putrid meat. And if you're bringing a follower down to kill all the undead hyenas around the sinkhole just there that give a lot of XP, they'll give you a lot of feral flesh, which again you can then, if you set up yourself a little ichor farm, you can pop all that meat into your compost bin, which will decay over time into putrid meat that you can then move to your fluid press and turn into ichor. So while you're out and about leveling up that friend or those friends, if you're on war party, you're cleaning up as you go along, but you're also not just throwing everything away, you're producing yourself a useful little bit of material. Another quick one for the grinder, just to finish up on this side of things, is if you've got too much gold and silver coin lying around and you're not going to use it at the merchants in Sepra, but you need some gold and silver dust to be able to produce your own alchemical base, which you will need gold dust, silver dust and ichor. And you can farm a little bit while you're out and about if you get lucky off mobs and out of chests and what have you, but another quick way to do it is if you take those gold and silver coins and again you pop them into your grinder, and as you will see, the more you put in, they will produce it to gold and silver dust. Just bear in mind, as soon as you've done this, you cannot convert it back from dust into coins or bars, so only use the gold or silver that you don't intend to use for anything, and this will turn this into gold dust or silver dust if you put gold or silver in, and it'll do the same with bars as well. And then you'll have your gold and silver dust and your ichor that you can then pop into your alchemy station or into your fireball cauldron to produce your own alchemical base. Then our final one for our good old friend the fluid press. Again, if you've killed some gazelles or elk kings and you've used your cleaver on them and it's given you a carcass, but you just want to drop them because they don't have any use, again they do, because you can get a bit of blood from this and maybe a bit of bone, which then again you can grind down into bone meal. Or when you've been using your fish traps and you've got your grouper or your dogfish, your catfish, whichever you need, but you don't want any of the others, again just bring them to your fluid press, pop them all in there, and as you can see at the very bottom, we're now getting another interesting resource, because if you pop those carcasses in, it'll give you the little bit of hide from it, it will give you a bit of bone potentially, and also the blood from them. But then from the fish, as you can see, if we're squishing down the fish, they will also produce a little bit of oil. So when you've got your main production of oil going on your alchemist bench, you can also have a little byproduct, if you will, of the fluid press by producing some oil from all those unwanted fish that you didn't need. So then if you're going into the growing side of things, as I say, if you want to grow aloe, this is nice and easy. You just need your regular compost in a planter, and what you would do is, if you get yourself some aloe seeds, you pop your aloe seeds into your planter with your compost, and that will turn them into aloe leaves for you. And you can keep doing this and gathering up the seeds as you harvest your aloe, best doing this with a sickle to get the best results from it. And also, if you find that you don't want to carry on doing that and just farming seeds constantly, another thing you can do is that if you take some of the aloe leaves from your plants, if you've got some bark in your dryer, if you place the aloe leaves in your dryer, as you'll see at the bottom right there, those aloe leaves will be dried out and turned into aloe seeds. So as you produce your aloe, you can keep taking so many of the leaves back off, popping them into a dryer and turn them into seeds, and add the seeds back to your planter again to grow them into even more. And over time, as you do little bit by bit, you'll end up with producing constant seed and having the constant aloe leaves. This is really useful if you don't live near a river or somewhere where there's a lot of aloe, and this can work on exactly the same principle for any of the lotus flowers. So if we were to pop those in as well, for example, as you can see there now, that will also produce those into seeds for us, so that if we didn't want to keep getting all the blossoms, or if we hadn't farmed a lot of them or been able to get a lot from any chests or drops from mobs that we've had while around about, we can turn them into seed, which we can then again add to a planter. However, with the flowers, as I say, you will need to use potent compost, which again is produced in your compost bin from your regular compost. And to do this, you'll need the plant fibre, putrid meat and bone meal, and then you'll also need to add blood, so just regular blood, and also raw ash. And raw ash is farmed from obsidian or from drops that mobs give you out of chests if you get a little bit. And one of your best places for obsidian is up and around in the volcano, or if you come into this entrance from the Black Keep, if you're coming up from this way and you're making your way at the bottom entrance, then look out for the obsidian nodes and hit them with a sickle. If you hit obsidian nodes with a sickle, they will give you a ton of raw ash. And raw ash again is another raw resource that can be used for a couple of things. It can be used, as we say, in our compost heap, or it can also be used to produce white dye on your dyer's bench. So once again, to grow most of the flowers you will need potent compost, but for normal growing like aloe, all you will need is regular compost. Then another quick one to show you guys: if you picked up any pieces of armor or weapons and you decide you don't want them, no matter what level they are, if you pop them in your dismantling bench, as you know, they will be broken down into various materials depending on the level of weapon or armor piece. This can be a pretty helpful way of tidying up your base, but also giving you a few little resources back. But however, if you complete the dismantler journey, which is one of the new journey steps, it's been here for a while now, if you complete that particular journey, which is quite simple and easy to do, and then get the unlock, which is this bench behind me, the improved dismantling bench, a little bit bigger, but this will give you the same results as the normal bench. However, it may give you slightly more return on the items that you place in. Just how does this bench work? Well, it works exactly the same as the regular dismantling bench, just only difference is it will give you slightly more return on the resources to the regular bench. When this bench first came out, however, it was really good and gave you a heck of a lot of return, but they did at one point also nerf it, so it doesn't give you as much now. But however, if you add your items that you want to dismantle into the bench, they will work their way down, and as you can see there, the top list is your items that you're dismantling, and the big inventory at the bottom is what you'll get back from dismantling items. And as I say, depending on what the item is will depend on the resource that you get back, and it applies the same with armor pieces. Depending on what they were made of, you'll get a little bit of each one back again. So rather than just dropping them because you think they're no use, if you can carry them, if you're an encumbrance build, or you're prepared to bring a few bits back with you, or you just didn't really realise what you were picking up, you've just emptied every body that you found or every chest that you found and got back to base with absolutely everything, but then you're going through your inventory and you find out that's something you don't need, pop it in your dismantling bench and get yourself some worthwhile, useful resources back. So there we have it, folks, just another quick one with some hopefully useful tips and tricks there for you, for bits and pieces that you've found that you think are actually rubbish. Maybe now you'll find there's a lot more things that you don't need to drop on the floor, because it's actually worth keeping hold of till you get back to your base, because you can either dismantle it or break it down into something else that is actually a little useful resource that you can use. So I hope you found this one interesting, hope you found it useful. Let me know if there's anything else you've got in the comments down below, and while you're there, why not leave a like and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. awesome journey we're on at the moment now. We've just ticked over 900 subscribers at the time of this video and on our way to 1,000, which is very exciting for the channel. So why not come and be a part of it and join us on our journey. Thank you once again to one and all for being here, and if you'd like to know a bit more about Conan Exiles, why not check out one of the videos on screen, and I'll meet you there.